So I'm going to introduce the speakers. We have Clare Moseley, who's the founder of Care for Calais. We have Faris Al-Tufweri, who is a successful asylum seeker in the UK. We have Sue Clayton, a refugee activist and independent filmmaker. And we also have Hector Wesley from PCS and Barrack, which is Black Activists Rising Against the Cuts. So we'll start with our first speaker. Can I introduce Clare Moseley, founder of Care for Calais?
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. In terms of what we can do to build solidarity, there are 4 things I wanted to mention. So given we've got 5 minutes, I'll have to be quick. But basically, there are 4 actions I think we can take that will help the situation. First thing I wanted to talk about is last year there were 3 different reports into police brutality in Calais. One was by Human Rights Watch, the US organisation. One was by the internal police investigation, and the other was the French Ombudsman, the Defender of Rights. So there's a fair bit of pretty conclusive evidence now of fairly serious police brutality. The point that I wanted to make on this is that I feel it's way too easy for people to sit back and say, well, it's terrible the way the French treat them. It's awful that the French are doing this. They shouldn't be allowed to get away with it. Due to legal agreements, including the Joint Ministerial Declaration of 2015 and now the New Sandhurst Treaty, amongst others, pretty much everything that happens in Calais to do with migration is a joint agreement between the French and the British governments. Our government has a say in everything that happens. The way they are treated, these decisions that are made, the police operations, we have equal say in what happens. And more than that, we are paying for it. And as a chartered accountant, I will tell you that when you're paying for something, you have a lot of say in what happens. So this is not just, oh dear, the French are doing this. We are doing this. We are equally, if not more than equally, complicit. And this is not being said enough. It's really important that we start to get the message out that it's us that's doing this, unfortunately, that we have a responsibility. It's not just, oh dear, the French are doing this, isn't it awful? This is something that we are part of and we need to start to say no to. The second thing I wanted to mention was the New Sandhurst Treaty. This is what was agreed when Macron came over to meet Theresa May recently. And it's the latest agreement about how they manage things in Calais. One good thing was agreed. They've agreed that they are going to streamline the process for family reunification under Dublin. Now, this is great news. This is a process that we already have. It's already law, and it's something that they should have been doing anyway. But basically, the process was failing. It wasn't happening. So people weren't getting transferred, and they've agreed that they are now going to make that happen. So it's really good news, but only to the extent that we should have been doing this anyway. However, even though this has been agreed, we need to keep our eye on it and make sure that it does happen. Because, as we all know, the government might say things, but that doesn't always mean they're going to happen. They've also extended the deadline for children to be considered under the Dubs Agreement, which is also good news up to a point. And the point is up to, they have capped it at 480 children. And I personally see that as a very small number. Sue is going to be talking about this more, but we need to keep the pressure on there, and we need to say this is not okay to cap it at 480, because this legislation was introduced because a decision was taken. It's the right thing to do. If it's the right thing to do, there shouldn't be a cap. Either it's the right thing to do and we bring in the legislation, or it's not the right thing to do. But something can't be the right thing to do one day and the wrong thing to do the next day. So there shouldn't be a cap. The next thing I wanted to mention is the family reunification legislation more broadly. I talked about that in the first session. I hope you all heard that. Basically, this is a really big opportunity for us to do something to really help refugees, but we need to act, and we need to act before the debate in Parliament on the 16th of March. It's really easy to do. It takes 2 minutes. There is a link on our homepage of our website. There's a link on the Refugee Council's website. We really need you all to just go on, take 2 minutes to fill out the form, and then share it. Share it with everybody that you know, and it's a great opportunity for us to do something to help refugees. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is the agreements that we are part of to do with Turkey and Libya. We can't just accept these just because they've already happened. In Turkey, we paid 3.5 billion euros to basically pay Turkey to keep 3 million refugees out of Europe. This is a massive number of refugees who are not in a safe country and now have no route to find somewhere to apply for asylum. In Libya, we have been paying a ridiculous amount of money and providing boats, training and other support to the Libyan Coast Guard. And I'm assuming that everybody has seen what's happening in Libya. There are people being sold at slave auctions. There are people being held in detention centres where they are being tortured. It's absolutely horrific. Libya is hell on earth, and we are complicit in keeping people trapped there. Our government has signed up to both of these agreements. Just because they've already happened does not mean that it's okay, and we can't just sit back and live with this. So that's 4 things that are going on right now that we need to be campaigning on. It's a lot, but it needs to happen. I've only got 5 minutes, so that was really, really fast. But the 4 things you need to keep in mind are family reunification. We need to make sure that the things that were agreed in the Sandhurst Treaty actually happen. And then we really, really need to start campaigning for the 16th of March. That's an easy win, but also it's a really big deal. If we can get this bill through, it will make real change and affect a lot of people's lives. The DUB scheme should not be capped. Sue will talk about this. We can't give up. It's taken a long time, it's been a long fight, but it's not over yet. We can't continue to be a party to the inhumane treatment of refugees in Calais. This is up to us. It's not just the French, it's the UK, and we have to tell everybody. We can't just let people say this is wrong and it's France's problem. It's not, it's ours as well. And we can't accept the immoral agreements our government has signed us up to in Turkey and Libya, and even worse, they're calling a success. They're not a success. They are absolutely inhumane and morally wrong, and it's not okay, and we need to keep saying it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Claire. Okay, our next speaker is Faris Al-Tufweri, who successfully claimed asylum in the UK.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much. I'm really so glad to be here today with you, all of you, and see all these faces here who do amazing job for all the people who stay waiting on the border between France and England. All of them, they happen to be here today and give them messages to tell you how much they have the knowledge, the scientists thinks in their mind and their heart. But hopefully with you, all of you guys in here, and amazing people here near to you, we do something together. Step by step, they help come again to our them heart. What I would like to talk about today here is to compare what's happened as I was an asylum seeker and now as I have refugee leave to remain in England for 5 years. The point is in here. As I am under the name of refugee, we should all together to do something for that name actually. That name is mean any person who have a right to be as a human, you have a right to choose any person who wants to live in it. And until now, all the time I'm trying to my best to produce myself in the society and do something for all the communities who I named them by translating or asking them from amazing people who I make them here, especially from Birmingham or from Leeds City as a friend of mine. So really, at the moment, we need your voice about to do something for refugee and help us to be involved in the society again, as I wasn't insulated for 2 years by the Home Office security. At the moment, really, I have a lot of our friends, they waiting for the decision from the Home Office to get the answer about them cases. And until now, they spent 1.5 years to get the decision and they don't get anything. And some of them, really, they want to go to the court and then we try making DNA test between them and their relatives. The judgment they faced them by, he say, your DNA wasn't a fake, which is made in UK here. This situation put many of the refugees in depression situation and they feel insulated so much. Even they can learn anything. They can't go to the university or the college to do something here. And that's becoming trouble really in reality here. because they can speak in English and they can work at the same time. The point of that, they wasn't dying in the same situation when was in the Calais and Dunkirk camps. Hopefully, with all this we can do together, and all the sound, all these people here, we can change in that by your sound and by making step for the human right. The refugees need you today. Hopefully we can do something together. And thank you very much for listening to me.
Okay, thanks very much to Faris for speaking to us. Okay, our next speaker is Sue Clayton. Sue is a refugee activist and an independent filmmaker, and I think she's going to show a short clip before. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll speak very briefly, and then there's a 2-minute trailer for the film. I've put some posters around the building. I made a film called Calais Children, A Case to Answer. So I'll just try and speak very briefly and support what Clare and others are going to say, I'm sure. I worked for years on the refugee issue, but not at Calais. I'd been working on anti-deportations. And when I went there, just before the jungle was about to be pulled down, I was absolutely shocked out of my socks, which I'm sure everybody is when they go, that in the middle of 10,000 people, there were up to 2,000 minors, children. Nobody knew their names. The volunteer groups were doing what they could, but they were basically invisible. Imagine if that was your child. No one even knew who was there and who wasn't. And there were 14, 15, 16 children at least who died, trying to get onto the road. And if that's not bad enough, what I then discovered, because I work a lot with human rights lawyers, and obviously Clare would have known this as well, is that there are 2 pieces of legislation, the Dubs Amendment for children with no family in UK, and Dublin 3, which we're now sort of broadly calling the family reunification for children that did, and they just were not being applied. So children were actually dying in sight of our border, Union Jack, officials, UKBA, and I just could not let it rest. I just cancelled everything else and crowdfunded and spent a year making this film. And when the camp was taken down, the children were left in containers with the camp smoke, toxic smoke, fire, rats this big. The French took the adults, but they left the children while France and Britain had a sort of diplomatic fight about what to do with them. And there's a clip in the film where Amber Rudd is actually in Parliament saying every care is being taken of the children. And then we cut to, what looks like the First World War, basically smoke, flames, and these terrified kids who weren't being looked after at all. And the hypocrisy of the government over this is beyond words. And exactly as Clare says, my big point is, this is paid for by you, me, every taxpayer in this room. We are paying for it, but they don't want to make that clear to you, and it's not the bad old French. So, every child that's tear-gassed, which they were all the time, every child that's pepper-sprayed. There's a story from last week that a child was hit by a police truncheon and lost an eye. All the ones who've died on the road, they actually have a strong legal case, if not a right, under those even current legislation, let alone whatever else we might propose, to have been here months, years ago. So the fun bit in the film, if this all sounds a bit dreary, is me yelling like a fishwife because the Home Office did turn up, finally, but 18 months too late. And you can see me in the film losing my temper and going, where the hell have you been? Why are you here protecting these kids? So you can see me lose my temper quite a lot in the film. But just to wrap up, and then we'll just show you the trailer, the real point of this is that I managed to persuade 10 human rights lawyers to come completely at their own cost, on their weekends off, their own cars, they're paying their own youth hostel bills and everything, to come and test my thesis that these children already should be accepted under Dubs. And they were able to sign up 37 kids, which was a lot for them to do, free, because each case is a huge amount of work and needs social work assessments, psychiatric assessments. So the lead child in that case, who's several times tried to kill himself, has got a wound in his neck from being, a bullet wound from when he was in Afghanistan. He's a classic case of a child that deserves our support. His name is anonymised as ZS. The case is called ZS and Others, and it's in the height. We've actually, through the process of this film, we've taken action against the Home Office, and we're suing the fuck out of them, because I'm so angry about it. Because I think it's the only thing to do. There's no point in just kind of feeling sorry about it. We have to challenge them in the court, and it's the 28th of February and the 1st of March in the Royal Courts of Justice. And I know Stand Up to Racism, Rahul, is organising a demo outside the court. So I'm just saying that in a kind of hopeful way, that is a concrete thing. If there's a legal issue, we should challenge it in the courts as well as in other ways. And if anyone wants to book the film, it's free, or donations for the DVD or the link all go back to the children in the film. I'm going back to Calais tonight. We're showing the film in Calais. As I know some of you are going as a Stand Up to Racism delegation. So as part of that, you'll be seeing the film, the whole film. But here's just a little trailer. And as I say, my website is up there. Please do book the film if you want to screen it. Thanks very much. Put your hands over your ears in case it does that noise again. Oh, well. Built up. So they've had sound problems here, so I'll just commentate over it. So this is simply saying, the UK has its border at Calais, but UK never sent any officials to monitor or process the people there, or to deal with the fact that there were these 2,000 children. And then this is saying, the camp was then threatened with closure. What's going to happen? The kids are really scared. Where are they going to go? And Dobbs is saying, he created this amendment. He himself, as you know, is a kinder transport child himself. And he's tried, every way to get us, more Dobbs children. It's capped at the moment at 480. We're doing less than Sweden. We're doing less than countries with a tenth of our population. There are 100,000 refugee children in Europe, and we think we can only take 400. Here's Amber Rudd saying it's all a terrible mistake. This is when she said it was safe in the camp for children. She actually said it the same day. She said it's perfectly safe, we're looking after them. So you see how safe it was for a 9-year-old kid? So that was the day the camp came down. And of course, this is the brutality, but I see this whacking the kids. But I completely support what Clare said. This was done with our money, our taxpayers' money, and our approval. And Diane Abbott on Message saying it's outrageous.
Disease, squalor, and hopelessness.
Oh, there is a bit of sound. Then the children were looked after by the French for the winter after the camp came down in October 2016. The French took them for the winter and put them in very remote centres all over the country, hoping the British would come visit them and sort them out, but the British didn't. And so now that's why a lot of them are back in Calais and Paris, a lot still in the south. And, they feel, as the lawyer says, that was our lawyer, they've been let down. The Dobbs Amendment was a promise, and that promise has been broken. So this is why we have to fight in the courts. Sorry about this.
Okay, well, thanks very much to Sue for showing us the clip and for speaking to us. When we take contributions later, you'll be able to ask questions or make any suggestions to any of the panel members. But before we do that, I'm going to invite our final speaker today, which is Hector Wesley, and Hector is a PCS member and a member of Barrack.
Thanks very much, Mandy, and it's a pleasure to be here to address this meeting on this really, really important issue. And I was conscious this is a trade union conference in essence, and for me, as a trade unionist within my union in PCS, I'm proud to be on the NEC of my union. I think to be a trade unionist, you have to be an internationalist, because you can't really be just focusing on your own situation in your own country. If you believe in trade unionism in its purest form, you have to care about the movement across the world and about how people are treated across the world. And that's why I'm very, I mean, I shouldn't say proud is the wrong word, because these situations shouldn't exist, but they do exist, and we have to do what we can to try and address that. There is, saying this brief what Barrack does, Black Activists Against Cuts. We started going to Calais in summer 2015, and basically we saw it was brought to our attention the conditions in what was called the jungle, the migrant camp, and it was truly shocking conditions. I mean, I've been in many parts of the world. I've been to Africa, I've been to Asia. Some of the things I saw in Calais are some of the things I've seen in some of the poorest parts of the world, and they're actually happening in supposedly a first world country, and it was truly, truly shocking. And certainly the issue about the unaccompanied minors, that was certainly for me personally very, very difficult to accept. And when you spoke to them, a lot of them did have, when you ask them why they want to come to England, why they want to come to Britain, it's because they've got ties with this country. They've often got relatives in this country. That's why they're so keen to come here. And you think, well, why is this situation happening? So what we do, we do our bit, and it's, we don't solve the problem by any stretch of the imagination, but what we try and do when we go over there is speak to them about their needs currently, because often basic things that you and I will take for granted don't happen. So, for example, when I last went to Calais in December, spoke to some of the migrants in Calais, because they got rid of the camp and they thought the problem had gone away. No, it has not gone away. There are little mini camps beginning to spring up all over Calais. And I asked one of the men I spoke to casually, when's the last time in a shower? And he said, 6 weeks ago. And there's actually been court cases in Calais about putting in decent sanitation facilities for the migrants there. Toilet facility. Where do you go to the toilet? You go to the toilet in the bush, and that's the situation. And it is truly, truly shocking. So one of the big things that's really got to me is that when you used to go over there, we used to bring sleeping bags and tents. But what used to happen, if you bring sleeping bags and tents, they get confiscated. The police will go around every night and confiscate all the tents, all the sleeping bags. People have to hide these things in the woods. And sometimes they need to show us how they hide these things to keep it away from the police, because the police will come and take it from them. So it is a really, really difficult situation over there. I mean, we're planning to go over the next couple of weeks, and we do things like GoFundMe. We get people that my union supports has supported some of our work. Other trade unions across the TUC have supported our work over the last few years, and we really do value that support going forward. And I think the key thing for me, really, as trade unionists, is we are often getting into trade union conference season, is to have that discussion within your branches, within your unions, about supporting this really, really important issue. It's not easy, I'll be honest about it. I know in my workplace, when I go to my members and talk about these issues, they will say, well, why don't you talk about my issue in my workplace? Why should we be getting involved in these things? And you have to have those conversations, and you've got to say, actually, yes, things are difficult for us, but we've got to have some compassion and some thought for people in a much more difficult situation than ourselves through no fault of their own. And that's the key for me, is why I think, we have to support this campaign and get involved with it, because it's a situation that is not getting easier. In many ways, it's getting worse. I mean, I found out recently, I spoke to one migrant recently, he actually had to climb over the Alps to get to France. Because of the French have tightened the border with Italy, you're getting migrants now are going over the Alps to try and get to France. People getting frostbitten, people are probably occasionally dying, making that particular crossing because they ain't got the proper equipment and stuff like that. So it is a really, really difficult situation. So I know I've got my 5 minutes, and I know Mandy's indicated to me she will be a brutal chair. So I'll pause there. But the key thing is basically, thanks for being here, because the fact that you're here shows that you have a sort of awareness of the issue. The key thing is to have that dialogue with your fellow activists in your branches, in your workplaces, in your unions, and do what you can to support this particular issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all the speakers. I just wanted to put us into the international frame for a moment and just ask a question, which is, when did the term refugee or the term asylum seeker become terms of abuse? Actually, the term asylum seeker didn't exist within the law of Britain until 2002. And it was created in order to manufacture another category within which it would be possible to locate people and then treat them in a subhuman way. And my brother on the platform here knows, as well as many others, that whether you're seeking asylum and when you become a refugee in the UK, never mind the horror of Calais, in the UK, you are very often ending up street destitute as refugees. You are impoverished in the extreme if you are a person seeking asylum. If you're in a family, you may well have gone underground with your children. So the situation is profoundly painful and a horrible, horrible environment for people to be in. 3 weeks ago in Manchester, in collaboration with a community-based organisation, the Home Office attempted to launch in Manchester voluntary return surgeries in the community. We stopped them in Manchester and we're rolling them back. But the head of the Home Office voluntary returns section was in the room and publicly stated there are already 30 voluntary return surgeries in the community in Birmingham and London. Now, we've asked them for the list of where these surgeries are, and they've publicly committed to giving it to us, but we still don't have it. So I wanted to particularly alert you to that issue here, and I did put out as many leaflets as I had. If you get any intelligence about it, or you want to become part of a national campaign on this, because Right to Remain, it's happened under their nose. We're telling them. Okay, thank you.
My name is Rahul Patel. I'm from South London and live in Brixton. And Calais is very, very important. I remember me and Clare, when we went on that first train and she stayed there, which is very, very important. But the most important thing, I think, at the moment is mobilising people, because there is a groundswell, an absolute groundswell of people who want to do things for refugees. And I think, how do we use that? I think Sue's film is very important, because we organised a film showing in Brixton and we had 80 people turn up, right? In colleges that we're organising these, people are turning up. In various localities, people are turning up. And I think, and as Sue said, it's an organising tool, because people feel they're not getting information, they want to be part of it. So let's get them in, they see the full case, and then we can mobilise. 28th of February and the 1st of March, outside the Royal Court in the Strand, is the case coming up. And if you see the film, it's the EZ case, and we need to be there. Of course, it's London-based, but if you're outside of London, do turn up, bring your banners. The lawyers have said they want us out there because they want to show there's a groundswell of support for refugees who are stranded in the Calais. And I don't need to repeat the stories that people have said. It is gruesome. It is absolutely gruesome, the way that people are treated. The £45 million deal that Macron and May did wasn't just about, well, most of it is going to go up in building walls. Let's be clear about it, because that's where it's going to go, security. The fast tracking is another lie that May and Macron are putting forward. But behind the scene was a deal that they did, which was Britain and France did a deal, a military deal, which was that they would partake in military operation, joint military operation in Mali and Chad. Right? The last time that both Britain and France did a military operation was Libya. Right? And we know the consequences of what's actually taken place. This is the pretext of fighting the Islamists and ISIS or whatever. So that was the scenery behind it. And I think we need to be piling up pressure. We have to send staff across to Calais, money, clothes, etc. The fight is here. The fight is here, and we have to do whatever we can to do that. So the 15th of March, case that's coming up in court, is the next stage. But let's get people out, mobilised in terms of refugees, because there is a groundswell of support. We know that whenever we make a call, people deliver. I'll just give you one example. Where I live in Brixton, there's a local lad who does Domino pizzas. He's on his bike every night, and he says he wants to do something for Calais refugees. He's from Somalia. money. He's put his own posters up around all the local shops, right? Calais, and he's, he collected loads of stuff. It's too much stuff, if you ask me. But nevertheless, it's been collected, and we've got to send it across. But his manager at the local Domino's Pizzas has his cousin in Calais. So we know what the links are in terms of what's taking place. And I know Mandy has said to me before that some of the Calais refugees come over, and she's teaching them ESOL classes now as well. They are part of our community. They need to be part of a community in London or outside London. Let's make it a priority and tell that Amber Rudd and Theresa May and all those little gruesome Tories that, for us, we are for humanity, we are for solidarity, and we want people here. The reason why they're coming here is because you're there with your guns and bullets.
Candy Udwin. I'm on the PCS National Executive with Hector, and I work at the National Gallery. And I wanted to plug Sue's film as well and thank her for making it, because we had a showing, Camden Stand Up to Racism, recently, and the room was absolutely packed with a mixture of older people and students. And it isn't just a film that makes you angry, it's a film that makes you want to do things. So we now have a minibus that's overbooked going tomorrow. It's really good. Because this is a trade union conference, it's a very simple thing, but can we get that film adopted through our trade unions, shown at trade union conferences, shown at day schools, and use it as a tool to turn people into activists? And as people have said, I think you said, we're not... when I raise money, I'm going tomorrow, when I raise money at work, that's a brilliant thing, because it means that some people are just... it's overwhelming how much they want to give things, but you do have to have some arguments with some people, and it's great to see people putting their head up and having those arguments, because a lot of people are putting up with the racism in their daily life at work every day. So it's a tool for us as well, I think. And as people have said, it's not charity. We have a battle in this country about accepting more refugees, but we have another battle, and it's an obvious point, maybe. It's one that was made in the NHS workshop. We have a huge battle in our unions about austerity. And if, what our rulers try to do on every bloody issue is blame migrants, and refugees. And so actually supporting those refugees in their battle for a life is really important just in and of itself, but it's a really important battle for us, because it's a way of us fighting those divisions and building that unity that we need here to take on that lot.
Sarah Tomlinson, and I'm an NUT member. This is our headquarters and part of the new National Education Union. I too have been going since 2015. I think December I went. Clare was there before me, and it does change your life when you go, because you do think, I've got to go and do something. So I'm also going this evening on a visit. When we went last half term, we're teachers, so we usually go in our half terms. We took 120 people, I think, on the last visit. This time, Mandy and I are sort of key organisers. Mandy's very good with a spreadsheet. We thought we were going to take about 30 people, and I've just had a figure that it's about 120 again that's going to be there over the weekend. So I look forward to introducing new people and taking people who've been before. And why do we go? And it's because it just means you talk about refugees. So when Ian Hodson, what a brilliant speech in that plenary, when he said, no refugee has ever taken my council house or taken my hospital bed. And I think those are the arguments that you have when you start by saying, I'm going to Calais, I'm collecting for refugees, and then you start having those discussions and it gets into a wider political argument. I was just looking online, and in December, 3 people were killed on the roads in Calais, 3 refugees, and one of them is a 15-year-old boy who has a brother in this country. So just every month, as Sue was saying, we are seeing children being killed by the negligence of our state, and because they are not doing anything about it. And we are their voice. And again, Sue's film is brilliant to show. It really hits home. Just to say, if you want to get involved or go on a next visit, then if you come through Stand Up to Racism to our website, then we do a kind of job of putting people into cars, and we'll take you over, because it's quite scary going over. It's quite overwhelming. Clare does a brilliant job of organising and welcoming people there. But if you go with a team and you get to know people, it's much more fulfilling to go and come back and, as I say, tell the stories of these people who we will not forget. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Audrey Glover. I'm from Lancaster and Morecambe NUT. We have a proud tradition of solidarity, and I was really pleased to hear Ian Hodson speak in the first plenary from the Bakers Union, because we supported the Bakers Union when they were on strike at Hovis in Wigan, and somebody in their strike rally made a statement that I will always remember, which is, when we go and give solidarity to a picket line, it is not charity. When you take a collection, it's not charity, it's solidarity. So when we agreed to donate £200 to the winter appeal in our December meeting, Jess Christie, our young president, came up to us at the end and said, look, why don't we go? Why don't we take people? And I think the taking of people is really important. Before we knew it, I'd contacted a TA who had a conversation with Dawn. She's here as well. I had a conversation where she said, if you're ever doing anything about refugees, let me know. She's on somebody who's been on a March the 17th bus previously, you know, to stand up to racism. But before we knew it, we've got 13 people on a delegation that are here today, and a movie going on to Calais after stand up to racism. Dawn works in a primary school in the West End of Morecambe, and I don't know if anybody saw it on the news, but Morecambe was in the news before Christmas, because our primary heads had been on telly saying, look, these are the washing machines where we wash our children's clothes. We help them get money to pay the cards for their electric. We're having to do counselling and helping people who are getting evicted. It's a school, but this is what we're doing. You know, I have to sometimes sit a parent down and give them something to eat. And the local Tory MP turned around and said that it was just this head teacher who had a vendetta, and there were no problems. He hadn't heard anything like this from the local job centre. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because at Christmas, they were absolutely inundated. The West End of Morecambe, there's a big nightclub, and it was just full of stuff. Toys, food for the children and the families of the West End of Morecambe. And I think, and we've been covered in the local paper, and I said to them, you know, the same government that allows that travesty of children in a first world country starving is the same government that is spending millions on keeping children in the most appalling, dangerous conditions in Calais and Syria and wherever else. So the important thing is that we're taking people, we want to take people as much as we want to take money and stuff, because we want to go there with the message, refugees are welcome here. And then we want to go back to Lancaster and Morecambe, and we want to tell people and show people why we have to fight to open the borders.
Hi, my name is Gwen Vardigans, and I'm part of Stand Up to Racism in York. I'd just like to say 2 points, really. I must agree about mobilising the population. We had refugees are welcome here stalls all over the city, and we were told not to go to a particular area in York, which I won't name, but it had had in the past regular National Front stalls, and we were told not to touch it, not to go there with a barge pole. We took a stall, and we had a card that people could sign as solidarity, like the other stalls. And it simply said, whoever you are, wherever you're from, you're welcome here. And we had people queuing to sign that particular card. And there wasn't one person that we met that didn't have sympathy and empathy for what was going on in Calais and in Syria and so on. So it's about mobilising those people. But the second thing I want to say is I have been a member of the RCN for many years now. And we have a conference every year, a congress, and it's in Belfast this year. And we put in some motions, and we got one through on stand up to racism and one being considered. The first one was to implore the government to stand by and extend the Dubs agreement, and that has gone through, so that will be debated. We'll still hope that it won't be needed. We hope that something will happen before then. And the second one they're considering is about reaffirming our horror of slavery, modern slavery, after we saw those dreadful pictures in Libya of Africans being sold on the open market. I don't know whether many of you saw the pictures, but horrified me. So, I mean, the RCN is not known for its radicalism, but I think if they can put these things forward, then urge your unions to do the same, you know, because it really has to stop. And we have to have open borders. We have to have those children over, because we have destroyed their lives with the policies that we've supported, not us personally, but the government has supported in Syria and Afghanistan and elsewhere. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Nita Sangera. I'm from UCU, a union, and I am going with Mandy today to Calais. This is my first time. And again, as everybody's saying, there is a groundswell. People do want to know about this. Our union wants to know about it, but we need to do more. And I don't think we're doing enough. So I will take this back, what I've heard today, and I will tell my union that we need to be more involved. I mentioned to one of my a number of my students, I says, I'm going to Calais, and I says, what can we do? And it's exactly what you're saying. People do want to be involved, and they do want to be mobilised. So it's not that we're pushing an agenda that nobody wants. We are internationalists. We're not British, not Indian. We are internationalists. Our borders are open and should be kept open. We should be letting people in, because at the end of the day, where is our humanity? This government has ripped the heart of humanity from themselves, and they're trying to do it to the rest of us. But we need to stand together, and we need to ensure that we are the internationalists that we say we are, regardless of this heartless government that we're with. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Simmons. I'm from Hackney Stand Up to Racism. My dad came over on the kinder transport, so 10,000 Jewish children came on the kinder transport, and less than 500 are going to come on the Dubs thing. I just find that appalling. I know how many kids were left behind on the kinder transport, so there's a job to do. What I want to say, though, 2 years ago in Hackney, there was this enormous spread of collections and support for refugees. What we thought in Stand Up to Racism was that actually that was great, but to turn that into a movement, into a force, was the challenge that we got. But it wasn't just a one-off thing. And the role of the unions in supporting Stand Up to Racism in the borough and then spreading that message was really, really crucial, I think, in amplifying the effect. So it wasn't just a charity thing, it became part of a movement. And the two key unions were the Teachers' Union, where they did assemblies and collections across the schools in the borough, and that obviously reaches very, very deeply into the community. The other key union was Unison in the local hospital, again where they took people out from the hospital to do leafleting and collections and whatever in public, but that really reached deep into the community. And I think that the result was this year that we had were able to get together more for Care for Calais, and that people felt that there was a movement as well. The other thing is that all that fed them back into Stand Up to Racism, and it feeds back into the fight against Islamophobia. It will feed back into building for March the 17th. So there's that enormous groundswell of good people want to do something. A third of the population gave in the first time round. The job's to turn it into a movement, and we're part of that. And the unions probably the best way to make the link.
Yeah, Sally Kincaid from the National Education Union. Welcome to our headquarters. Just a couple of things. I don't really want to talk about Calais, except to say, I have to say I'm very selfish on this one, because we actually built our union branch for the donations we got for Calais. Because when I talked to teachers who were off work with stress, I said, look, I've got a job for you. I need coats. I need coats for Clare. And they'd come to the union branch with the coats for Clare. So it's actually a way, a selfish way of building a union branch and building an organisation in school. But I want to talk about when people get here, because it's the journey to get here is the most horrendously dangerous journey. It is literally like gambling every single night. You talk to some of the kids who've got over here about lorries. My God, they can tell you some tricks about lorries. But imagine doing that for a year. And then you get here, and rather than people saying, welcome, Faraz, put the kettle on, they go, Faraz, G4S for you. You know, and let's say, no, well, the reason I know about G4S is I work in Wakefield, and we have one of the initial accommodation centres in Wakefield, which is opposite the prison. So welcome to the UK if you're a refugee family. You're opposite the prison. You're living in accommodation run by G4S. When you get moved out of that accommodation in 3 weeks' time, which has got rats, etc., you'll be put in some lousy other accommodation which will have G4S on it. If you are lucky enough to, you'll be transported by G4S, by the way. If you're unlucky enough to end up in a detention centre, that's run by G4S too. And if you're deported, guess who gets the profits from that one too? It is big business that's going on here, and let's be clear about it. But you see, this isn't just about refugees. Actually, somebody said it's about solidarity. Because if we are going to build and beat the people that are doing us over, then we've got to stand together. Last night I went to see a marvellous play called We Are the Lions, Mr. Management, about Grunwicks. And I kept thinking, I wonder if she'd been around today, whether she'd have been allowed to come to the UK legally or whether she'd have come on the back of a lorry. And for those of you who don't know about Grunwicks, Google it. It was when young Asian women basically organised a strike where 30,000 trade unions came to march in solidarity. What a marvellous example. And that's what it's about. You see, May the 7th, what date are we on? What month? March the 17th. I heard a wonderful story from Scarborough. Scarborough, you've been to Scarborough, it's a bit miserable in the winter. But Scarborough, Stand Up to Racism, have organised a coach to the March 17 demonstration. And 24 Syrian refugees said, can we come too? Problem there. How are we going to pay for it? So they went to the fracking campaign. Said, look, we've got all these Syrians that want to go on the march. To the anti-fracking campaign. Oh, I'm sure we can raise the money. And they went back to all the great grassroots solidarity groups that have been set up all around the country, that have been collecting coats and whatever. And they said, look, we've got a problem here. We've got 24 Syrians that want to go on the demonstration. Oh, we can help you. And then they went back to the trade union movement and said, we've got 24 Syrian refugees here. Can we have some money? Yeah, of course you can. And that's the way we build the movement. Together we build the movement. I get my strength from folks like Faraz, to be honest, who've existed and fought and existed and are now here. Thank God for that. That's what gives me the hope to carry on. One final point. I was lucky enough and privileged enough to become the foster carer of a young refugee who got in on the back of my lorries. And I can tell you what, I look forward to going home, especially now he can cook. But I look forward to going home because this is a lad who's just started at college, who has more enthusiasm about education than I have ever seen in my 20-odd years of teaching, who comes home full of the joys, who brings something to us that we can never, ever give back, materially or emotionally or anywhere else. So I'll tell you what, folks, refugees are welcome here, and the toys...
Hello again, guys. In fact, I see all the guys in here, all the ladies here speaking about the children under the age and over 16. And by the way, there is another people called the young people who isn't over the age. And they're still on the border waiting to do something for them at the moment. And really, they don't have any way to come to England here until by smuggling the truck and coming to England here. And all the time they're captured by the government, which is the French government or by British government here. What I want to say, if you're feeling that all the people who live there is near to you, as a friend or a brother or sister, please make your step to speak about all the refugees in another button there. Because really they're dying step by step, especially in this winter. There is many accidents happen there. We can't hear anyone he heard about someone who's listening leaving the camp, and some people trying through the night to crossing the border by the trains or anything by truck, and they put them in the mess situation. That situation is not come by their choices. The choices become by what we haven't heard today by the government. They pushing these people to come to here by in this way. We try, as I was a refugee for 7 years, crossing the country to asking for my right, as I am stateless person, which is undocumented person now in the world, because I born in country and that country never given my right, as in I was living there, which is from Kuwait. That situation with many of us and other refugees to travel through the world and find the best country to live in with it, but never was in any country to listen to you except to England here. Because in the government here was in my country in 1965, and they was arranging all the companies to making the petrol and everything, discovering everything, even the gold and the silver there. So the point is of that, if you not us do anything from this point, not any one of these guys will come to this country here, because they will stay stateless, on indication person, and will be lost in all their life. And all the time in the TV, many of the people is dying and losing their life again by again. The reason of that, we never make anything from here. We try to do something. We're pushing ourselves. I know it's very hard to speak about that, especially with the politics or with the government. But as you are a British person or anyone who have a right to talk on today, you should take your step and do something for all these people there. The government listen to you as you are citizen here, and will listen to me as I'm trying to prove myself as in here, a dedication person, as speaking about them right. You should do something and don't leave them guys. And thank you very much, really, to see you again here and helping all these people and to listen to us about what's going on, and we're trying together make something for again. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Yeah, just very briefly, I want to support all the people who've said it doesn't end in Calais and the condition of people who do reach this country. I'm sorry if this has already been mentioned, but I don't know if everyone's aware of the group ABC, which is Against Borders for Children. Have they been talked about? Because in school, just really briefly, in schools, the Home Office, the Department of Education was having teachers ask children as young as 4, even in reception classes, what was their nationality and what language was spoken at home. They then not even gave, but actually sold that information, which was supposed to be about language teaching, provision to the Home Office, and families have actually been deported because of information that children as that young, and this is not exaggeration, it's on the ABC website, Against Borders for Children. So obviously within teachers' unions, that's a really important point. And with medical staff and workers, there's a group called Docs Not Cops, because again, doctors and medical staff at all levels, GPs and nursing staff and at all levels in hospitals are being asked to ask people for information that the Home Office is now using. And there's a third group called Not Sharing or Won't Share, which is the same, where people who work in all these caring professions are, just going to get together to not let the Home Office invade their jobs. And just final point is, I'm sure you all know this, but the Home Office use this term hostile environment. And even though they're building walls, they say the way to limit, people coming to this country is to create a hostile environment. And they use it quite openly, without any irony. And they're congratulating themselves that they've been very successful. Numbers are falling because they've created, and that hostile environment, is in schools, healthcare, as trying to rent a property, trying to get right to work legally. It goes through practically every job and profession that all of us are involved in this country. So I think that's another challenge for, in the workplace, is to make sure that you're not being turned into a kind of Home Office snitch, basically. It's really worrying. And as everyone says, the majority of people, I visit a place on the Isle of Wight, which is UKIP, and I was on TV a few times. Extracts of this have been used on ITV News, and these women, local women, are now knitting for Calais. And to get UKIP people who are saying, "Oh, I just didn't realise." So it's all possible.